Okay, well, welcome everybody to the first edition of the King and the Wizard for 2022, and we're starting this off in style with a guest for our Scottish Burns Night themed discussion today. We're joined by a good friend of ours, Mr. Lee Jack, who's an winning restaurateur from Scotland, with his restaurant the Sundance Shop in there near Inverness. And he is going to be guiding us through some whiskies that we're going to taste today with our cheeses, which are also from Scotland.
Yes. So today is not we're not talking about cheese and wine. We're going to be trying something a little different: cheese and whiskey. So I'm only half Scottish. Whiskey was compulsory in my family, especially if you had a cold. From about the age of 3, hot toddies were the cure. But Lee has chosen these whiskies, done a cracking job, and I'm really looking forward to trying these and seeing how these work with the cheeses.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a big whiskey fan, so I'm really interested to find some things that I like. I've always kind of shied away from whiskey because I just didn't really like it, or thought I didn't. But I'm aware that there's hundreds of them out there, so there's bound to be some that I like, and hopefully these 4 are going to hit the spot for me. No pressure, Lee.
No pressure whatsoever. I love it. On the cheese front, Stephen, I've got a little question for you.
Yeah, sure.
I got given this cheese board for Christmas. Yeah. What does all these knives mean?
So the thing with the knives, I think a lot of these sort of cheese sets, they're packaged to just give you a nice looking selection of knives. The little almond shaped one, the right handmost one as you're looking at it, is actually it's actually a Parmesan knife.
Okay.
So when they're splitting whole Parmesans down, they'll have 2 of those, and they kind of score a crack around the rind of it, and then use the knives to kind of lever the cheese apart. So quite how that ends up in a small home cheese board thing. But the other answer around that is that really the rule of thumb really is that you have a different knife for each cheese on your cheese board. So you don't cut the blue cheese with the same knife that you cut the brie cheese with, because it'll cross-contaminate flavors and stuff like that. So if you're going to do it really properly, then if you've got 5 cheeses, you'd have 5 different cheese knives. So that's part of the etiquette of the cheese board, if you will.
I didn't even know they existed. I literally pulled out the cupboard this morning and I dropped it, and
it's over.
And I was like, oh, there's knives in here. So I thought I better ask the king of cheese.
How many years have you had that board for then, Lee? You've had it for what, 10 years?
I've had it for 6 years, and this is the first time it's been out of the cupboard.
Oh, there you go.
So feel honoured, guys. Feel honoured.
Yeah, superb.
Just as well you didn't fly down to do this in person, otherwise you'd have had it confiscated on the
Absolutely. I was just like, what's going on here? Why is there knives? Where's that coming from? Then I started playing around with them, like, why would this be this? Well, I was just like, I need some expertise. Anyway.
And they do, there's all sorts of different shapes of knives. I mean, I've got this, I just like this sort of little hatchet because of the shape of it. It just works really well for me. So bear in mind size-wise, it's not huge. It's actually quite small, but it's just the thing. Nice.
When you hold it up close to the camera, it looks pretty big. When you move
that's right. Yeah, I can actually threaten something from a distance. Actually, still looks quite small, doesn't it? Anyway, enough about cheese knives. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful ones out there. But generally speaking, you see a lot of those cheese knives that have the holes in them, and that's mainly about reducing the drag. When sometimes you cut a softer cheese, you might find it sort of sticks to the knife. Or just sort of breaks apart. But with the holes in, you're reducing the surface area that's in contact, which is one of the reasons we use wires when we're cutting cheeses in the shop, because the wire is kind of like the smallest amount of surface area you can get away with that will cut really cleanly without sticking to the cheese.
On that topic, my parents bought a lovely cheese board when, I don't know, I was probably about 16 or 17, which had a wire on it. And so they put it with wire. It was great until I got myself a really lovely truckle cheddar and tried cutting it with the wire, and the wire couldn't do it. The wire snapped, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, it's always difficult to get replacement wires for those things, and suddenly you've got something that goes from nothing, great to nothing. But there are some of the tougher cheeses and again, go back to the Parmesan thing. That's why they don't cut Parmesan with a cheese wire, because you just never get into it. So when they're breaking the whole cheese up, they will use those knives and score around the rind first. Once you're into it, you can use a wire from the inside out, but it's a tricky one to cut.
Being a chef, Parmesan is one of our worst enemies. Yeah, I just hate it. You know, trying to cut it properly,
Yeah.
you know, and you just think, go for it. So I always delegate that task. It's just the way forward, isn't it?
Yeah, so we find with cutting cheese in the shop, it's the super hard cheeses like Parmesans and like the extra mature Goudas, or the really soft, really gooey ones, which are both difficult to do, but in different ways, and both require an amount of confidence, really. Particularly with the soft ones, something's really gooey, you can cut and portion it, but you've got to be confident, courageous enough with it to just sort of work at a pace that you can get it done without it sort of slopping everywhere. But yeah, the guys really don't like the super hard ones either.
Yeah, for the soft ones, before they have a chance to run away. So it's all about speed.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Talking, but shall we get on and eat some cheese and
let's have a go.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the first cheese we've got is Anster, which is a unpasteurized cow's milk, which is a bit like a Cheshire. So it's a crumbly cow's milk cheese, and it's made by a lady called Jane Stewart at St Andrew's Fine Cheese in Fife. And in fact, the town she's in is called, this is where Lee, you'll have to correct my pronunciation here. It's Anstruther, which is...
You're correct, Anstruther.
Yeah, which is on the east coast of Scotland, as if my geography is sort of...
Near Aberdeen and Dundee style.
Yeah. So she has been making cheese on her farm since 2008, and it's aged for about 8 weeks or so. So it's nice and sort of fresh and crumbly. I really like this cheese. I mean, I'm a big fan of sort of Cheshire style cheeses anyway. I was fed them a lot as a child, and this pushes lots of buttons for me.
It's a lovely clean taste to it.
Yeah,
but it builds as well through as it stays on the tongue.
Yeah, it's not a strong cheese. I mean, a lot of people that try this and go, "Oh, it doesn't have much flavour," but it has. It's got loads of flavour. It just kind of comes out with a bit of time. And I know you guys both got your cheeses out of the fridge a couple of hours before we recorded this, so that's great because then it comes to temperature, all those flavours start to come out.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Weird at the end, it becomes like a milky kind of texture when you're into it. It's really nice.
It's almost, I mean, this is going to sound a bit odd, but the finish on it is almost like a dried meat. It's got quite a
I get what you mean, like a Parmahami kind of texture style. Yeah,
absolutely. It's interesting how often sort of meaty descriptions come into cheese when you're doing cheese tastings. Quite often those kind of like savoury, meaty elements appear.
Very nice.
So we're pairing this with
the Dufftown.
The Dufftown. Yeah, I've got the wrong bottle.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost another comment. It's just the first flavour that gets me. It's slightly chalky, that cheese.
Yeah.
That just fades very quickly to make way for that beautiful flavour coming through as it spreads across your tongue. Right. Now, Lee, I've got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
We start on the whiskey. I've got a question for you, and that's the water. To water or not to water your whiskey?
Okay.
Me personally, I've always put a drop or maybe 2 drops, and that's it in a whiskey, just to wake it up when it comes out of the bottle. What's the
common practice is that to get the best 2 decisions of a whiskey is that you try it completely without anything straight away, and then you add 2 drops of water.
Right.
The reason being is that the drops of water just open up the flavor, but before, like, people used to drown out, like you see a lot of people just doing 1 cube of ice.
Yeah.
They believe that the flavor comes out over it. There's no logic to that. It's just a little 2 drops of water will change the whiskey and then straight away. So this is a 12-year-old, but it's a 2008 cask strength 12-year-old. So Dufftown distillery is in Keith, which is about an hour and a half away from me, which is nice. So originally you should get some vanilla flavors straight away, like caramelized vanilla flavors on your nose. You will get the sherry taste, but as I say, it's very light, so it's not heavy on that.
So yeah, this is definitely a nice light whiskey. It's going to go well with cheese. Slight floral elements on it, touch of heather, I would say. Don't know if you're getting that.
Do you get any marzipan?
Mm.
Now you say that, yes, actually.
As it builds, it comes through with vanilla. It's definitely got that almond marzipan taste to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a very figgy, marzipan-y kind of infusion in your mouth.
Yeah.
Meant to get a cinnamon backdrop at the back of your palate when you taste this. As I say, like as you finish off your whiskey at the back, maybe as you add the water to it, you'll taste it a wee bit more, and you should feel like if you're tasting something with cinnamon in it, that'll be at the back of your throat.
My 2 drops gone in. Let's see what happens.
Nice whiskey.
It is. That little dash of water does just make a difference, doesn't it? It does change.
When we get to the Dalmore, you'll see the massive difference between the non-water and the water.
So for me, that opens the whiskey up quite a bit.
Mm.
Softens it slightly, brings the honey forward. There's a few other notes coming through with the honey as well now. Those figs, yes, very nice, rich caramel finish.
Mm. And that sort of, like you say, that into sort of cinnamon. Definitely, I'm kind of getting kind of cinnamon roll kind of vibes from it now, which is really nice. It does it, yeah. That water just softens it out really, really nicely.
I recommend it. Any whiskey that you have, always have 2 drops of water, but try the whiskey first.
Yeah.
Because, like I would say, the experience with the water is way better, in my opinion.
Yeah. In this, so for 1 out of 4, I would agree with you. Let's see how that pans out through the remaining whiskies. Yeah. Now my father and I disagree on this, so I've always put those drops of water in. He's never done that. He likes them neat. But then again, his taste in whiskey is very different to mine.
I think that goes back to the old school way, like they used to take out the angel's share out of the cask. So if you worked in the distillery, you would steal the angel's share, which is obviously the stuff that evaporates during the cask. And then that way, everyone would just drink it neat to get the real cask strength.
Yeah.
But now, traditionally, water is the way forward.
Yeah.
Anyone that puts more than 2 ice cubes in the whiskey, though, is really destroying it. You're just drinking water then.
Yes.
But
so I've never I wanted to keep my whiskey warm as well, so I don't put ice in it.
No.
I find it sort of, you start to lose the ability to taste it as you anesthetize it in a way. Right.
I certainly find that's the case. I find that with wine. So many times wine is over chilled when we sort of have it in sort of restaurants and bars and things. But at home, we very rarely chill wines down. I mean, we've got a cool pantry that we keep the wine in, so it's not warm, but it's it's nothing worse than over chilled wine. It's like over chilled cheese. You can't taste anything.
No, that's right. I mean, you
freeze the flavors.
The fridge, it's coming out at 4 degrees, and it's probably supposed to be served at about 8, or more. So I always like to let mine warm up a little bit. And going back to when I used to do more tastings, the white wines would be served at room temperature to allow you to taste everything that was there.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. Shall we try this with the cheese then?
Yeah, let's give it a bit of a whirl. This is a bit of a step into the unknown. Brings up the honey in the whiskey.
Yeah.
Nice cheese creamier for me.
Actually, the cheese there softens the whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight away, if you did the whiskey first, what you should do is try the whiskey, hold it in your mouth, and add the cheese, and you'll see the softness of the cheese.
It does. I think that that cheese is definitely giving the whiskey a lift.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the cheese is disappearing a little bit though behind the whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not getting lost as much as I thought it might.
No.
I still get the silky texture and the feeling of the cheese, but as a pairing, actually, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they sit together very nicely. I've done sometimes you pair things and you get a real bitter car crash in your mouth.
Yeah.
As you say, it's the cheese flavors are quite delicate to start with, so maybe they start to lose a bit in the mix. But yeah, the texture of the cheese really gets amplified by the whiskey.
It does, yeah. And for the
Both
whiskey,
for each other, which is good.
yeah, and that mid palate characteristic character of the whiskey comes through. So not just the honey, but you start to get a lot more of the vanilla, the almond, the marzipan.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Wow.
Very nice.
I was expecting not to finish each of these whiskies, but that's one down completely. So yeah. Apologize if I start shouting soon.
We'll just turn you down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's Burns night, Ian. It's Burns night. We might as well celebrate, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I didn't bring my book of poetry there. We could have gone through something.
Never mind.
Did I ever tell you about my story about the haggis?
Go on.
for it.
Quick one. And my story about the haggis was when I was 21, I was in Disney World and I was living there for a couple of years. So my 21st birthday, we had a joke that we would take out haggis and all that, because traditional Scottish. So did the poem and all that. And this girl comes up to me, one of the Americans, and was like, "Hey, so what's the deal with the haggis?" I said, "You know what? At your 21st birthday, you have to hunt the haggis in Scotland, right? And it becomes a tradition year after year after year that you just go out and hunt haggis, and this thing you do with your dad and your mum." And I got my dad involved in this, and it was hilarious. So obviously, because I was in America, my dad hunted it for me and he brought it over. So she was like, "Whoa, really?" All right. Fast forward about 5 years later, I'm in this bar reunion with all the guys. And she was like, "Oh, hey, long time no seen." And I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she was like, "Do you know what? I've been really thinking about when I come to Scotland, I really want to come hunting haggis with you." And I was like, for 5 years, this girl has believed that we hunt haggis, as a tradition in Scotland. And I was just like, and then when my friend Moshe came over, we ended up getting dressed up, 2 guns, and we're like off to hunt the haggis. And she's like, "Oh, great, I can't wait to see it." And I was like, "Oh, girl, Google it and realize it's sheep's blood, man."
So she knows the truth now, does she?
No, still not told her. Still not told her.
Right, so
I hope she has.
I've got a great story for you about how you hunt the haggis then that you should try for her.
Go for it.
What you got to tell her is that the haggis is a very odd beast. It lives on the top of the Scottish mountains, and its right legs are longer than its left. That enables it to run around the top of the mountain anti-clockwise really, really fast. So, if you start chasing them, it'll naturally head off in that direction and you'll never catch it. So what you have to do when you're hunting the haggis, you've got to do it in pairs. One of you will go up there and you'll scare the haggis and it'll start running around the top of the mountain anti-clockwise. The other one has to hide behind a rock, wait for it to come, jump up and scare it. You've got to make sure you scare it because otherwise it'll, stop and work its way around. You really want it to turn around and run back the other way. And when it runs back the other way, obviously now it's trying to run clockwise around the top of the mountain with its right legs longer than its left. Can't do that. It just rolls down the hill. And then your friends down in the bottom can collect them in the valley where they come to rest. And that's how you catch your haggis.
Oh, I love it. Shall we try it?
Tell your friends, see if she believes you.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a great story. I'd be like, "Oh, we've got a new method. We've got a new method."
Haggis harvesting. No shots fired.
No shots fired. You'd think how all the butchers and all that have got it in their window, we've all been very busy. Yeah. Cool.
What do they do with all the legs though? Because when you get the haggis, it never has any legs on it, does it? So
no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
You never see haggis legs for sale, do you? So, well, maybe you do.
Maybe you do. There's
just go to the right shops.
Yeah. I will find you some haggis legs. I will find you. I vow. I will find you it.
A challenge. Oh, lovely. Shall we move on to our second pairing then?
Do we rate them? Do we rate that pairing? Out of 5?
We could give it a score. Yeah, we could do that.
What do you think? I would say out of 5, probably pairing, probably a 4, actually.
Yeah, I would say between 3 and 4 for me. I would go with
Yeah. For me, it's definitely not up there at the top 5 because of the cheese disappearing. But at the same time, the way the cheese brought out the that mid palate on the whiskey, amplified those lovely flavors, those lovely honey flavors. The way the whiskey lifted the cheese's texture, yeah, 4 is good for me.
Cool.
That's a good start.
Right,
Very
where are we
good.
going?
And in true Scottish tradition, we have to finish our whiskey before we move on to the next one. Sorry.
Already done. There we go.
I'll apologise now for the use of shot glasses with my whiskey. It's the only thing that we had that was small enough that we had more than one of.
Oh, here I'm well trained. I've got 4 different glasses here ready to go.
See. There we go.
Awesome.
So cheese number 2 then is called Corra Linn, which is an unpasteurized ewe's milk cheese, a bit like a manchego. So as you can see, it's a lot harder texture and more aged than the Anster was. This is aged for about 8 months or so, and it's made by a lady called Selina Errington up in Lanark. And they originally started making the cheese after they found they had a glut of sheep's milk in spring and early summer. So they started to make cheese, and this has been around it's been going for a few years now. It's one of my favourite Scottish cheeses, this one. It's named after the highest waterfall in the Clyde Falls. That's my fascinating fact about that one. So there you go. They also make, Selina makes a few other cheeses up there. Really nice blue called Lanark Blue, if you find that one. It's a very nice one too. And this year they've also made a cow's milk version of this cheese, because they had the opposite, a bit of a shortage of ewe's milk cheese. Well, it would have been last year when they were making it. So they made a cow's version. They're called Corrington or Carrington Linn instead, which is very nice too. But we managed to get some of the real deal. So
now this looks right up my street. So Stephen, you know I love these hard cheeses and those super mature Goudas.
yeah,
It's got that sort of texture to it when you get it, when you open it. It's nice and hard. You can almost see they're sort of salt. Well, you can't quite see the salt crystals, but it looks like they're there.
yeah.
And now it's warmed up. It started to sweat as well. The way a nice, good hard cheese does.
Yeah, I like that. And this has got those kind of almondy notes you'd expect from Manchego style sheep cheese. It's beautiful. This with a saltiness there, touch of sweetness.
Yeah.
The texture at first is quite sort of almost a bit grainier in the mouth, but it does soften off a bit.
Oh. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, it's not. I was expecting it to be saltier. It's got a lovely. The salt is there, but it's quite subtle.
Yeah.
Again, there's a little bit of nuttiness coming through. Beautiful texture.
And you could use this. You could make a beautiful pesto with this instead of Parmesan. So I could use this to up with pine nuts and basil. It'd be lovely.
Certainly would work for sure. Got the aftertaste of the saltiness would be great if you melt it on top of like a pasta dish.
Yeah.
Close to the rind. It's got that beautiful biscuity flavour that you want to get from the rind without being overpowering. A little bit, mushroomy almost.
And again, I know it's my favourite sort of hobby horse subject about not eating rinds, but this is one where, great example, if you're not eating the rind on that, then you're probably missing out on a bit of a treat, because there's all those extra flavours there at the rind.
Yeah, that's got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So, where are we going with whiskey for this one?
So I believe it's Talisker, is it?
That's right, yeah.
Talisker. So this is a favourite. I've had Talisker almost as my house whiskey for a while.
Why? Are you mental?
I just like bigger whiskies. I like bigger whiskies.
Yeah.
And this, I sort of got Talisker, started drinking it. It was easy to find. So it's, there are some, it's not a great expensive whiskey that I feel precious about. It's something I could just have all the time. Unfortunately, people have started buying me different versions of Talisker.
All right.
and I'm not quite so gone on some of them.
Yeah, the 10 years not too bad because it's not as smoky as any other cask strengths. Usually the 21 years the worst one I've ever tried.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's in your face. And problem is people are put off by Talisker because it is the PT whiskey of whiskies. So it's made in Skye, and they're like for knowing that there are the peaty whiskies, they are the smoky whiskies, they are the full body strength ones. When you taste it, it goes straight into your nostrils. The first thing you smell is smoke and peat. It's a beautiful whiskey. Ideally, it should be perfect with cheese because it is deemed like an after dinner drink. Yeah. So like for us in the restaurant, for example, we recommend that this goes well with the cheeses because, again, after your nice heavy meal, it's one to really cleanse the palate, as they say.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about this being a big heavy whiskey, to tell you how, I mentioned my father and I disagree on whiskey a bit. He loves Lafroig, and for me, Lafroig is just punishment.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
No.
I don't like
it. Each to their own. He loves that peatiness, which is just a level, just more than one step up from Talisker.
This is a lot darker colour than the Dufftown before, isn't it?
Right, let's try this. Remind myself what Talisker tastes like.
So on the nose, you should be smelling, well, firstly the smoke, as you know.
Yeah.
You should have more of a seasidey kind of feel.
Yeah.
The sky.
I was going to say seaweed, but
yeah,
he's seaside. So
I always get from these kind of things. I always get almost like a sort of a hospitally smell, a kind of almost like an antiseptic-y note on the nose.
Exactly. That's the
TCP.
peat. So do you remember? Have you ever? Which was the phenol soap? It was pears, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that phenol smell. That comes from the peat, and it does smell like antiseptic.
Ah, that's what it is then. Yeah, that's the connection, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like sweet pears all the way through. So as you taste it, you should feel like a peppery kind of taste that provides like a balance that way. So the smoke should go, but it should have a long finish.
Yeah. So I find it does I've always thought about Talisker comparing it to Islay whiskies. It always has a bit more of a saltiness to it.
Yep.
So that saltiness definitely keeps coming through on that finish. For me, that smokiness, I don't get it on the initial taste. I get it again mid palate, and then it dies away on that finish.
That pepperiness is just lingers. It's just there.
Yeah.
Do you guys get like a sugary kind of in the palate?
Not yet. I'm expecting to get more of that once I put a drop of water in.
I would say
I'm getting a tiny bit of sweetness actually initially. Yes.
Because I think the sweetness will be the comparison when we get to the cheese.
Yeah.
So as you add the water, swirl your glass, as you know, just like your wine.
So it changes the nose a little bit. That immediately softens it.
Yeah. No longer smoky.
Yeah. Slightly cleaner smell.
So you'll get more of the peppery taste now.
Yeah. Yeah, that pepperiness is coming through, particularly as the flavors develop and sticking around for that finish. There is very subtle sweetness, honey, I would say, very light honey, almost like a Highland heather honey.
It's interesting when you add the water, how the finish becomes longer.
Yes.
Yeah, which I find weird.
Yeah, because you think you'd be diluting it, so it's going to reduce the effect, but it's actually lengthens it.
Yeah, in your mouth, you seem to be lasting longer with it. So cool.
Right.
See what it compares to with the cheese.
Give them a bit of cheese.
Oh. So the first thing I did was, before I'd even tried the whiskey, just had a bite of cheese, and on the top of the remnants of the whiskey in my mouth. And there was a huge lift to the cheese in my mouth. A lot more saltiness coming through. Flavor was given a big kick. Got quite a lot of lovely creaminess on top of it as well. So I'm going to try it now the proper way, having the whiskey in my mouth and adding the cheese. But that was a good start.
From what I got of adding the whiskey to the cheese, whiskey and then cheese, was the fact that, and I don't know if it's just me, but the smokiness came straight back out as soon as I added the cheese.
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting, actually.
So for me, I would say it's more than that. It doesn't just come straight back out. There's more of it as well.
Yeah.
It really, and it sticks around.
That long finish is like into your mouth. It's like an explosion.
I've just tried it with a bit of the rind as well, and that just intensifies again because you've got that mushroominess on the rind.
It makes the cheese, for me, it makes the cheese taste a little bit drier. Takes away some of that sweetness in the cheese a little bit. The salty, that slight saltiness that's in the background of the cheese with the saltiness that's in the background of the whiskey, both hang around a bit as well. Good.
Sweet. So is that right up your street, Ian?
It is, because you got a cheese that's right up my street with a whiskey that's right up my street. I will call out though, I'm not going to finish this whiskey right now. I'm going to keep a bit of it because I want to see how Talisker goes, that peatiness goes with the Hebridean blue that's coming up.
I imagine it'll be matched quite well.
Yeah. But we
Cool.
can get on later.
So are we going to give this a score?
For me, it'd be in between a 3 and a 4, just because personal taste, really.
Yeah.
Personal taste of I'm not too much of a smoky person, so the infusion of that when you add the cheese was like a bit too much for me, but that's just me. Even
I'd agree that the smokiness does start to take over, and the pairing of the Anster and the Dufftown for me was my preference. So yeah, if we're putting the Anster at a 4, I'll put this at a 3.
So I'm gonna put this as a 4, and the reason is I like that smokiness, and that's just personal preference. I would imagine if you had my dad in the room, he'd be telling you that there wasn't even enough smokiness there.
But that's the thing with all these things, is there are no right or wrong answers, are there? It's all personal preference and personal taste.
Yeah,
which is what's so good about it. So cool. Let's move on to our third pairing then. So we have this one here, which is St Andrew's Farmhouse Cheddar.
Oof.
Which is another, we're back to Jane Stewart at St Andrew's Cheese in Fife again. This is an unpasteurized cow's milk cheddar, which is aged for 9 months. It's won silver at the British Cheese Awards, and it's got a really lovely, well-rounded flavour, creamy texture. And we're putting this up with the Dalmore, I believe, Mr. Jack.
Love it. Dalmore is my favourite whiskey for the 15.
I'm going to cut myself a little slice of this cheddar.
That cheddar's gorgeous.
That is. So lovely and firm when you cut it. How long did you say it's been matured for, Stephen?
8 months.
8 months.
So it's fairly young as cheddars go.
I'm surprised because for 8 months it looks quite firm and mature.
Yeah.
Great veins running through it. So then when you taste it, it does. It is still quite mild. Quite a lot of good, rich cheddar flavour in the background. But yeah, it's not one of those stonking. I'm mature and I'm going to kick everything out of the way flavours. Slowly, it's still got quite a nice creaminess to it for cheddar. Yeah, I think my kids would love that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cheese. It's also because of that where they're positioning the flavors. It's a really good crowd pleaser. As you say, kids like it, adults like it. We get people coming to shops saying, "I want a super mature cheddar," and they're thinking like the kind of, the Cornish cruncher type end that they get in Marks and Spencer's. Yeah. And again, it's a bit like what I said with the Anster. It's the flavors are there. It's not necessarily going to blow your head off, even though they're mature. They're classed as mature cheeses. I think there's people have a bit of a perception about wanting, take your head off heat or take your head off strength of flavor in most things, or, take your head off smokiness on your whiskey or whatever. But there's an awful lot around the sort of the delicacy of flavors and the subtlety of what's there. And this is hard to fault.
Yeah. So if I contrast this with the supermarket mild cheddar, medium cheddar rather, that we buy children, that is almost, I'm gonna be a bit rude now, but the cheese we buy from the supermarket for the kids is almost plastic in comparison to this.
Yeah.
This has a beautiful
I know what you mean. It's like more pure, and it's like you taste it and you know it's cheddar, but you're like really satisfied that it's cheddar. Yeah.
It's lovely and savoury. A lot of the supermarket cheddars are a lot sweeter. And that's for a reason, because they've done their research. They know what people like, and they're hitting particular flavour profile points on purpose and you have to give them credit for what they do. They turn out very consistent cheeses again and again and again. If you open a block of Cathedral City, every day of the year you'll get the same cheese every single time. But with these kind of cheeses, depending on the time of year, depending on how much coffee the cheesemakers had on the day or how hungover they are or whatever, the cheese is going to vary. The weather conditions can have an effect. You're going to get different cheese with the same recipe at different times of the year.
It's like me and the pickle.
I want to point out that I'm using my knives. They're going down like a storm.
Excellent.
Yeah, brilliant.
Good.
Delighted.
Tell us about the Dalmore.
So as I said, this is one of my favourite whiskies. As you can see, it's a rich golden colour. It's from Alness, which is probably about 45 minutes close to me as well. Very, very close distillery. As you smell it, first thing you smell is a perfume, kind of potpourri kind of style. As you go, maybe a hint of a Teddy's chocolate orange style. When you do taste it, the palate it's like a medium delivery, so it won't overpower you.
On that nose, I know what you mean about the Teddy's chocolate orange. For me, I was getting a little bit more than that. It was sort of almost starting to head into Christmas pudding territory.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's quite a rich, fruity flavour in the background there.
Yeah, I'd agree. And when it gets to the flavour, I really like really just a PX sherry, and there's hints of that kind of raisin in it, raisininess there. That sort of those sort of winter fruits.
Yes.
It's not too much, but it's very obviously not. But that's interesting for me as someone who's not really a whiskey fan. This is like, I can see this would be one that would fit the kind of stuff I enjoy.
The one dry. Sorry, when you go in,
it's definitely got those dried, almost candied fruit. Yeah. When you taste it, that which is going into the Christmas pudding flavour for me. It's there's all kinds of different fruits in there, but they are all like dried raisins, currants, sultanas, a few figs.
Yeah.
And definitely candied orange in there.
Yeah.
With that dose of chocolate.
Yeah, so, figs, hickory, aniseed, all that would be in there. What I like about this is the delivery of it, like the flavors in your mouth straight away.
Yeah.
The finish is more like a coffee texture, like you've had your chocolate and then you've got your coffee. As you add the water, the flavor should intensify, and you get more of like the winter spice, as you're saying, Ian, the figs, the Christmas pudding.
I'm getting on the finish, that hickory coffeeness is there. That's where the hickory comes through for me. It's almost like camp coffee.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're right, yeah, with the addition of the water, then everything is just bigger.
Yeah, and that's when the delivery really happens, just because, and that's when it becomes too easy to drink, really, because you're just like,
oh yes. Now, with water, that's something that you could very easily drink an awful lot of very quickly without getting any punishment from it being a whiskey whatsoever.
Yeah, right, because it's like chocolate in your mouth, isn't it?
Yeah,
with the smoky hintness, all that.
And that syrupy sweetness as well is just lovely.
Correct.
Yeah.
You can see why it's my favorite, but I can drink a lot of it.
Danger zone.
That's quite dangerous.
Right, I'm going to go in with the cheese.
Yes. So which casks has this one been in? Has this been in a Pedro Jimenez cask, or is it?
I'm not sure actually. It would have been in a. No, it's in a Amoroso sherry cask.
Amoroso, okay.
Oh, so that connects to the sherry flavors then, definitely. Yeah.
Yes, that's got some gorgeous flavor. It's just that chocolate finish, that hickory and chocolate and coffee finish is gorgeous. The dried fruit is still there after the water's gone through. So it's, I'm going to see what this is like with it, because we don't do this on this tasting. When I have my cheddars at home, I'm guilty of putting a nice big slab of chutney on it. So this is going to be like putting a layer of nice fruit on top of this cheddar. I think this might be a good combination. Let's have a go.
Yeah.
So immediately putting the cheddar in after having drunk the whiskey, the cheddar seems sweeter. It's
Great.
And richer.
What I would recommend is actually put the cheddar in first, then drink the whiskey this time. Because I feel like the cheddar gets lost straight away as soon as we have the whiskey in the mouth because of the floral.
I feel that the two of them, they get on really well, but it's not massively amplifying either.
No.
But they're very pleasant together. I could quite happily sit with a big glass of that and a big chunk of the cheese and have a very nice time.
I think Lee's observation about having the cheddar first is an interesting one. So putting them together, you're right. They don't amplify each other that great deal. But the cheddar after the whiskey, when you've got the whiskey on your palate already, it does give that cheddar a little bit of a lift. It's a slightly different way of doing things, but it works well. For me, it does.
I think what we got here though is like an excellent whiskey and an excellent cheese, and they're just showing off the talents together. Really.
But certainly in terms of the whiskies, that's my favourite so far of the three. That is so nice.
So
a revelation to me now.
I mean, I've never had this whiskey before, and it is a great whiskey that I'll come back to. And the cheese after the whiskey is working really well, but together they're not really. For me, they're not sitting comfortably together. But that doesn't take away from either of the products.
Yeah, as I said, I would probably agree. Ian, is that as individual products, they're amazing. And together, they just don't have that spark.
No. So what are we looking at on a rating out of 5? It's hard, isn't it? Because like I say, individually, I would be like giving both 5s.
Well, I like the cheese that match. Look, I've almost done with it.
Slow down.
Yeah, he was. I would give it a solid 3 pairing. But as in individually, they're both my favorite cheeses so far and whiskey so far.
Yeah. And if I was going to be, I'd agree. They're great whiskey and a great cheese. The cheese following the whiskey, after you've swallowed the whiskey, that I'd give it a nice 4. But I think as a pairing, the two of them is probably, I'm going to be harsh and say a 2, because they're not really doing much for each other.
So we need this last pairing to really pull something back. So we kind of started on a high with the sort of 4 for the Anster and the Dufftown. We went down to a sort of 3 to a 4 with the Talisker and the Corra Linn. We're now down to 2 to 3 out of 5 with the St Andrews and the Dalmore. So our final pairing, no pressure.
No pressure.
We're onto a blue. We're onto a Hebridean blue. There we go. This is a unpasteurized cow's milk cheese from the Isle of Mull, made by the Reed family. So this is going to be quite a strong, salty, acidic, spicy, creamy blue. So let's dive in.
Wow. It is creamy.
I've never been a fan of blue cheese, but I do like this one. This is the one you brought when we were last together, wasn't it? So,
this is yeah. So I mean, Stephen, before us, you've spoken about things like the Danish blues where they're almost overpoweringly blue, metallic. This one isn't. This is got a nice balance between the cheese and the veins of mold.
Yeah, it doesn't have that kind of metallic, foil type taste that you get with some of the sharper blues. I can imagine something like a Danish blue, which is just really hits you in the face with that real sort of metallic flavour. This is, I would actually say this is more of a, for me, this is more of a mid-strength blue than a super strong one.
Yeah.
Compared to something like a Spanish Picos, which is really, really peppery and hot. So Lee, we're pairing this with the Highland Park.
yeah, we picked a Highland Park Valfather. Unfortunately, for anyone that's listening, that's been discontinued now. But what can you do? We'll enjoy it. So this is a lovely whiskey. Highland Parks comes from Orkney. So it's another island whiskey, but it's obviously way north in Scotland. From initial nose, a very strong nose. So it'll be very robust. You'll have hints of vanilla, hints of pear, hints of apple. And it also, again, floral texture into it, but not as much as the previous Dalmore. This is packed full of flavor. You got honeycomb, pepper, nutmeg, all that salted caramel coming through there.
It's almost like toffee on the nose.
Yeah, similar toffee, salted caramel toffee, anything like that. That would be, hence why it's paired with the blue cheese, because you've got the strong sense of the blue cheese, but you've also got the sweetness of the toffee and salted caramel. As you taste it, those flavors should come straight in, like apricot, vanilla.
Yeah, definitely.
The idea I had before this is like, it's like a dessert in itself.
Yes.
So you'd have like a creme brulee kind of texture, kind of smell of that, or orange marmalade.
Butterscotch even.
Yeah, similar to that.
It is and just trying immediately after the cheese, that you're getting that lift you'd expect, where all that sweetness of flavors is the stuff that the whiskey is presenting. So there's plenty of that honeycomb, that butterscotch coming through. That's
it's more like they call it like a tropical fruit kind of like texture, like, so you'll have all this coming through you. As you add the water, again, the water, sorry, I can't pronounce my T's. Again, the finish should become long and confident. Yeah. So it should become way more prominent.
As I have the more of the whiskey, as it starts to take away the cheese, that fruitiness is coming through. So initially, just tasting it after the cheese, it was pronouncing the sweetness, pronouncing that toffee, that butterscotch, honeycomb. Now as the whiskey starts to take over, some of that fruit comes through, and it's not, the citrus that you sort of associate with alcoholic drinks. It is the sort of pears and the apples that's there.
It's a cracking one. It's a cracking one for any dessert, because Highland Park whiskies are, because they generally the bases are like caramel, pear, apple, vanilla, and that way. So and it should be along on any dessert menu, really.
That's lovely. That is, yeah, it's like a dessert in a glass. That's superb.
And now I'm going to go back the other way though, and try the cheese on top. That's making the cheese seem a little bit sweeter too.
Yeah.
That's a
lifting the creaminess as well.
Oh yeah.
From what I gathered, like the connotation of blue cheese beforehand, it's like it's a very smelly cheese and it's very in your face as you do it. When you drink this with a whiskey, it kind of like balances that out, and the pair of them just go hand in hand. I say you can have anything with this. You could have a sticky toffee pudding, you could have a chocolate brownie, anything, and you'd be satisfied.
So nice.
Oh, so let's try them in the mouth together. And I've got a massive hit of the I think it's because there's a big vein there, but I've got a massive hit of the blue bit element of the cheese just for an instant, which wasn't altogether unpleasant. It was quite good. So I'm going to try that again.
I think Ian's happy.
I am.
Yeah. I am too. So no, we're not saying much. It's just so good.
Yeah.
So they do complement each other very well, but they do it in a very strange way. So what I'm finding is if I have the whiskey, I mean, and this is more how you would normally behave, not the way we're behaving on a tasting. If I have the whiskey, drink it, have some cheese, you get a tremendous lift on the cheese. If I have the cheese, let that coat my mouth, and then have the whiskey, you get a tremendous lift on the whiskey. Brings forward all that beautiful honeycomb flavors. Put them in the mouth together though, and they do something slightly odd. And you get an amplification of the blueness of the cheese, and also an amplification of the sort of the alcohol and the fruit in the whiskey. It's so you get a bit more heat from the whiskey, a little bit, but also the sweetness disappears slightly, and you get that fruitiness coming through that pear. So it's very versatile. It's not what I was expecting at all when I had the two together in the mouth. I'm going to do it again just to check.
Yeah, as on like if you read them both on paper, you think, oof, actually that will go well, because you've got like sweetness of caramel versus blue cheese, and you're like, but actually, again, it's prime ingredients that you provided, Stephen. So it's like really cool.
But it's that thing with blue, good blue cheeses go just the saltier almost pairs so well with the sweeter stuff like honey. No reason, good reason people put honey and things like that on, or again, that's sort of the real sort of sweet raisin sherries and other sort of drinks like that. Just sort of, the saltiness and the sweetness just work together so well. As you say, on paper, you go, well, that would just be a horrible clash, but it just works really nicely. And I love what these two are doing. As Ian says, it's an interesting pair, but they're both doing really good things to each other. Like it.
Mr. Spears is happy. You can tell.
I like that pair. Could you? Now I've got a little bit of Talisker left, so I'm just gonna.
Are you going to jump in? That's all I've got. The other three I've kind of demolished, but there's a little bit of the Talisker, so maybe I'll just try a bit this with the blue as well, just out of interest.
I just wanted to save this I just want to try this big peppery, salty whiskey with this.
What you might find is that like it'll impulse back your throat.
Oh, so taking the whiskey, having had the bit of the cheese and that coat in my mouth, the whiskey, when you put it in, it amplifies the peatiness and removes pretty much everything else. So I'm left with a very phenolic aftertaste.
Yeah.
Let's try it the other way. It's yeah, that's not where I was expecting it to go. Not the reason I saved the whiskey. Let's try it. Trying the cheese after the whiskey, though, the cheese does become a little bit sweeter, a little bit creamier.
Yeah, it does sweeten it slightly.
But that the combination wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting the cheese to highlight the whiskey a lot more than it does. Not a great combination I was expecting. But the Highland Park and the blue, yeah, as you say, Lee, I was very happy with that.
Nailed it.
So let's give it some scores then. The Highland Park and the blue.
I'd give it a solid 4, close to 5.
Yeah, I'm pushing that one up above a 4 as well for me. That's
me too. That's a very good combination.
Yeah, I could sit there and drink it and eat blue cheese, and I don't even eat blue cheese. That's the thing. I could sit there and eat both of them and drink both of them and be happy. So
I think we got our winner for the day is the Highland Park and the Hebridean blue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Which is very surprising because when I read the notes, I was like, nah, that won't be the winner.
No, there we go. So we always get surprises out of this.
That's why there's always
we do it.
Yeah, always something that comes out, which is the great thing about doing these things. Super.
Awesome.
So there we go.
What was your favorite whiskey, guys?
I would say for me the Dalmore, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, followed by the Dufftown.
So the Dalmore was a revelation for me. I've never had Dalmore before, and I wasn't expecting to find flavors like that in a whiskey. And if you wanted to pick one, I would be thinking about that one, but I'd probably go for the Highland Park. And I think the reason for that is the Highland Park probably does more of what I want from a whiskey. That's not to take away from the Dalmore.
It's interesting though. If you had a Dalmore 12, you wouldn't get that experience. No. Same with a Highland Park 10. You need to go up a wee bit up a level just to make sure you're happy with them. And there's actually not that much price difference between the two because of that.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Interesting.
Good.
What about favorite cheese?
Personally, for me, the St. Andrews cheddar.
Yeah.
But
how little you've got left.
Yeah, I know. I've ate it all. Sorry. I just no, they were all lovely. They were all really, really cheeses that I've never tried around Scotland. These are absolutely phenomenal.
Cool.
And but St. Andrews wins for me.
I am tempted to go for the Hebridean blue. I really enjoyed that, and I think a lot of that was the pairing at the end there with the Highland Park. I think as cheeses by themselves, I'd probably go for the Corra Linn. But you probably knew I was going to do that anyway. Yeah.
You're kind of, as you say, you're kind of becoming slightly predictable in your taste on these, in a really good way. I love the Corra Linn. I mean, my personal favourite is the Anster, but then I've just got this thing about crumbly cow's milk cheeses. But they're all that's St. Andrews is wonderful. You know, you can't eat too much of that in my view.
No.
The Hebridean blue is new to us in the shop this year, so that's been a really nice one to have on as well. So I'm really happy to have discovered that one too. But they're all great. So excellent stuff.
Yeah, man.
Well, there we go. So we hope everyone has enjoyed our little foray into Scottish cheese and Scottish whiskies.
Oh, I totally have. It's been
great. Thank you, Lee, for taking the time out of your super busy weekend schedule to join us and share your whiskey knowledge. This has been
anytime, brothers. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. And join us next time. It's going to be February, so I think we're probably going to do something around Valentine's. So watch this space. And we'll see what we come up with for that.
You guys better get your ladies sorted.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. We will, thank you, Mr. Lee Jack. Thank you, Mr. Jack, for joining us for this and making us a special edition, Burns Night cheese and whiskey rather than cheese and wine. And Stephen, we'll have to put our heads together and see what we can do.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, looking forward to it. Right, we'll see you all in the next episode of The King and the Wizard. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye, everyone. Oh, Lee's gone.